The glass walls of the Galactic Council station stretched endlessly, revealing the stars beyond. Commander Sarah Chen stood in the observation hall, her hands clasped behind her back. She wore her dress uniform, the metals catching the artificial light. 6 months had passed since Earth made first contact with aliens. 6 months since humanity learned they were not alone. Now, Sarah was here to prove that humans belonged among the stars. The door behind her opened with a soft hiss. An assistant approached, their form shimmering and translucent. The Velkari were energy beings, barely visible to human eyes. "The Council is ready for you, Commander Chen," the assistant said through a translation device. Sarah nodded and followed. The hallway seemed to go on forever, filled with aliens of all shapes and sizes. Some walked on 4 legs. Others floated. Some had skin like rocks. Others had scales that shimmered like oil on water. They all stopped to stare at the human. Some pointed. A few laughed. She kept her face calm and continued walking. The council chamber was massive. 47 species sat in curved rows, rising up like a stadium. At the center was an empty space where Sarah would stand. Above, screens showed her image and data about humans. She walked to the center and stood at attention. "Commander Sarah Chen of Earth," announced the council speaker, a tall being with 4 arms and eyes that glowed blue. "You stand before the Galactic Defense Coalition. We will determine if your species is suitable for membership." "Understood," Sarah said clearly. A Krethian stood from his seat. He was massive, easily 8 feet tall, with an exoskeleton that looked like black armor. His name appeared on her translator, War Marshal Torvin. "I have reviewed the human physical specifications," Torvin said, his voice deep and rumbling. "This cannot be correct. Your bones break under pressure. Your skin tears easily. You have no natural armor or weapons. You cannot regenerate damaged tissue quickly." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Sarah saw the aliens looking at their screens, reviewing human biology. "That is correct," Sarah replied simply. An Althani delegate stood next. She was 12 feet tall, with muscles that looked like they could crush steel. "Your species has a Category 2 durability rating. The lowest combat rating is Category 5. How did you survive on your own planet?" "We adapted," Sarah said. "We learned. We built tools." "Tools," a Vorn said with what sounded like amusement. The Vorn looked like a cross between a lizard and an octopus, with regenerating limbs. "Tools are not enough in real combat. When you lose a limb, you die. When we lose a limb, we grow it back in days." More laughter echoed through the chamber. Sarah let them laugh. She had heard worse from drill sergeants. Torvin stepped down from his seat and approached her. He moved with the confidence of someone who had never been afraid of anything. He circled Sarah like a predator studying prey. "Look at her," he said to the council. "One solid hit and she would break. A few days without water and she would die. Exposed to our standard combat environments, she would not last an hour." He stopped in front of Sarah. "Humans are too fragile for warfare. Perhaps your species should focus on art or philosophy. Leave combat to those built for it." The chamber filled with sounds of agreement. Sarah remained still. She had expected this. Earth's representatives had warned her. The aliens saw humans as weak, soft, breakable. They looked at human biology and saw limitations. They did not understand what those limitations had taught humanity. "I request permission to participate in the survival trials," Sarah said loudly. The chamber fell silent. Torvin's eyes widened. "The survival trials? You cannot be serious." "I am completely serious, War Marshal." The council speaker leaned forward. "Commander Chen, the survival trials are extremely dangerous. They test physical and mental endurance under the most hostile conditions. No species below Category 5 durability has ever attempted them. Most candidates withdraw before completion." "I understand," Sarah said. You would be risking your life, the speaker continued. For what purpose? Sarah looked up at the rows of aliens. You judge humans by what we lack. You see that we break easily and assume we are weak. But you do not understand what it means to be fragile and survive anyway. You have never had to. Torvin crossed his arms. Bold words from someone who has never faced true hardship. Sarah's jaw tightened. Her left hand flexed unconsciously. I have faced plenty, War Marshal, and I am still here. The Althani delegate spoke again. If we allow this, and you fail quickly, it will prove that humans are unsuitable for the coalition. And if I succeed? Sarah asked. No one believes you will succeed, Torvin said flatly. But there was something in his voice. Curiosity, perhaps. However, if you insist on this foolishness, the Council will not stop you. It will be educational for your species to learn their limitations. The Council speaker looked at the other delegates. Do we have consensus to allow Commander Chen to attempt the survival trials? Lights appeared above each delegate's seat. Green for yes, red for no. Sarah watched as green filled the chamber. They were voting yes not because they believed in her, but because they wanted to prove humans wrong. That was fine. Sarah had spent her entire military career proving people wrong. The motion passes, the speaker announced. Commander Chen, you will begin the first trial tomorrow at dawn cycle. You will be provided with standard coalition equipment. No special accommodations will be made for your species' limitations. Do you accept these terms? I accept. Torvin shook his head slowly. You are either very brave or very stupid, human. Sarah met his eyes. Maybe I am both. But I am here, and I am not backing down. We shall see, Torvin said. The trials have broken warriors far stronger than you. I almost pity you. Save your pity, War Marshal, Sarah said. I did not come here to be pitied. I came here to show you what humans are made of. As the Council dismissed her, Sarah turned and walked out of the chamber. She kept her head high and her steps steady. Behind her, she could hear the aliens talking, laughing, making bets on how quickly she would fail. Let them laugh now. Tomorrow, they would see what fragile really meant. They would learn that humans did not survive by being the strongest or the toughest. Humans survived by being too stubborn to quit, too clever to give up, and too determined to accept defeat. Sarah looked down at her left hand. The prosthetic flexed perfectly, responding to her thoughts. The aliens had not even noticed it was artificial. They saw what they expected to see, a fragile human. Tomorrow they would start to see the truth. She smiled. The environmental endurance dome rose above the station like a massive bubble. Inside, it could simulate any planetary condition in the known galaxy. Sarah stood at the entrance with 11 other competitors. Each represented different species. Each was rated Category 5 or higher in durability. Sarah was the only human, the only Category 2. A Krathian technician handed her a pack. Standard survival equipment, water purification tablets, basic shelter material, fire starter, 1 nutrition bar, same as everyone else. Thank you, Sarah said, checking the contents. Torvin stood nearby with other council observers. He watched Sarah with an expression she could not read. You can still withdraw, Commander. No shame in recognizing your limitations. I will see you at the finish line, War Marshal, Sarah replied. The dome entrance opened. Heat blasted out like an oven door had been flung wide. Sarah felt sweat immediately spring up on her skin. The other competitors barely reacted. They walked into the heat as if it were nothing. Sarah followed. The environment was a desert. Red sand stretched in all directions under twin suns. The temperature reading on her wrist device showed 140 degrees Fahrenheit. The air was dry, pulling moisture from her body with every breath. The Vorn competitor laughed. This is pleasant weather. And Althani stretched her massive arms. A warm day, nothing more. Sarah said nothing. She studied the environment, looking for anything useful. In the distance, she saw rock formations, possible shelter. She started walking. The trial rules were simple. Survive for 72 hours. The environment would change every 24 hours, getting progressively more hostile. No help would come. Anyone who triggered their emergency beacon would be removed and disqualified. After 2 hours of walking, Sarah found a shallow cave in the rocks. It was not much, but it blocked the direct sunlight. She set up her basic shelter material to create shade. Then she sat down and waited. The other competitors were visible in the distance, moving around, exploring. They did not seem to understand the first rule of desert survival. Conserve energy during the hottest part of the day. Sarah's body was already working hard. Sweat poured from her skin, her natural cooling system fighting the heat. The aliens had better protection, but humans had evolved in hot climates. Her body knew what to do. She rationed her water carefully. Small sips. Just enough. As the sun set, the temperature dropped rapidly. Sarah emerged from her shelter and began gathering materials, dry brush, anything that would burn. When full dark came, she built a small fire. The desert night was cold, and she would need warmth. Above, in the observation deck, the council members watched on screens. "The human is being very conservative," one delegate noted. "Barely moving." "She lacks the energy reserves of the others," another replied. "She must conserve." Torvin watched Sarah's screen closely. She sat by her small fire, wrapped in her shelter material, eating tiny portions of her nutrition bar. She understands her limitations. That is smart, at least. 24 hours passed. The environment shifted. The desert vanished, replaced by Arctic tundra. The temperature plummeted to 60 degrees below zero. Wind howled across fields of ice and snow. Sarah's breath turned to fog instantly. 3 competitors withdrew within the first hour. The cold was too extreme, even for them. Sarah's body began to shiver violently. Her teeth chattered. Her fingers grew numb. On the observation deck, medical monitors showed her core temperature dropping. "She is going into hypothermia," the medical officer said. "She should withdraw." But Sarah did not withdraw. She moved. Movement created heat. She gathered what little vegetation existed, found some dried plant matter buried under snow. Her hands shook so badly she could barely work, but she managed to create a spark with her fire starter. The small flame seemed like a miracle. Sarah built the fire carefully, feeding it slowly. She created a windbreak using her shelter material and ice blocks she cut with a tool from her pack. The structure was crude but effective. Inside her shelter, she kept the fire going. Her body continued to shiver. The shivering was violent, painful, exhausting. But it was also keeping her alive. Her body was generating heat through muscle contractions. It was inefficient and burned through her energy reserves, but it worked. The observers watched in fascination. "Her body is destroying itself to stay warm," the medical officer said. "She is burning muscle tissue for energy. This will cause permanent damage." "Then why does she continue?" someone asked. Torvin stared at the screen. "Because she can. Because she chooses to. I do not understand this species." 48 hours into the trial, only 5 competitors remained. Sarah was one of them. She had frostbite on her fingers and toes. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. She had not slept more than a few minutes at a time, but she was still moving, still fighting. The environment shifted again for the final 24 hours. High gravity combined with toxic atmosphere. Pressure pushed down on everyone. Sarah felt like an elephant was sitting on her chest. Every breath required effort. The other competitors were struggling too, but their bodies were built to handle pressure. Sarah's was not. She put on the basic breathing mask from her pack. It would filter the toxins but did nothing about the gravity. She had to keep moving forward. The finish line was 10 miles away across rocky terrain. One step, then another, then another. Her legs felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds each. Her lungs burned, her heart hammered in her chest. Medical alarms were going off on the observation deck, but Sarah could not hear them. One of the remaining competitors, a Vorn, collapsed and triggered his beacon. 2 others withdrew voluntarily, saying the gravity was too much. That left Sarah and 1 Althani. The Althani was struggling too. Despite her size and strength, the sustained pressure was taking its toll. She looked at Sarah, and in her eyes was disbelief. How was this fragile human still moving? Sarah did not know either. Her body was screaming at her. Pain signals flooded her brain. Everything hurt, every muscle, every joint, every bone. Her vision was narrowing, her thoughts getting fuzzy. But there was something deeper than pain, something humans had that maybe others did not. The absolute refusal to quit. The stubborn insistence that giving up was not an option, not today, not ever. She thought about Earth, about everyone watching, about every person who had ever been told they were too weak, too small, too fragile. She kept walking. The finish line appeared ahead. A simple arch with lights. It looked like it was 1,000,000 miles away. Sarah took another step, and another, and another. Behind her, the Althani fell to her knees and triggered her beacon. Sarah walked forward alone. When she crossed the finish line, her legs finally gave out. She collapsed onto the ground, gasping for air through her mask. Immediately, medical teams rushed to her. They lifted her onto a stretcher and began working on her. Torvin ran down from the observation deck. He looked at Sarah as the medics worked. Her eyes were half closed, her skin pale. Frost damage covered her hands. Her breathing was labored. "Stubborn fool," he muttered. Sarah's eyes focused on him. Through cracked lips, she whispered, "Told you I would see you at the finish line." Then she passed out. In the medical bay, the xenobiologists examined her. The chief medical officer looked at the scans and shook his head. "She has tissue damage throughout her body, frostbite, muscle degradation, stress fractures in her bones. Her pain receptors were firing at maximum the entire time." "Then why did she not stop?" Torvin asked. The doctor had no answer. "I do not know. Logically, she should have withdrawn. The pain alone should have forced her to quit. But humans, Torvin was beginning to understand, did not always follow logic. When Sarah woke up hours later, she found Torvin sitting beside her bed. "You are insane," he said. Sarah managed a weak smile. "Maybe, but I finished." "Why? Why push yourself to this point?" Sarah looked at him. "Because pain is just information. And I decided it was not important information." Torvin stared at her for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to the door. Before leaving, he looked back. "The next trial is in 3 days. You should rest." "I will be ready," Sarah said. Torvin believed her. That was what worried him. 3 days passed quickly. Sarah spent them in medical recovery, but she refused to rest completely. She exercised carefully, testing her healing body. The frostbite was manageable. The muscle damage would take weeks to fully heal, but she could function. That was enough. The Crucible Arena was different from the environmental dome. This was a massive space filled with holographic projectors. It could create any combat scenario, any enemy, any terrain. The holograms were solid light constructs. They could not kill, but they could hurt very badly. Sarah stood at the entrance, checking her weapons. She had chosen simple equipment: a rifle, a sidearm, a knife, and basic armor. Nothing fancy. The armor was standard Coalition issue, designed to fit multiple species. On her, it hung a bit loose. 8 other competitors stood with her. All of them were experienced warriors. All of them were Category 5 or higher. The rules were explained by a combat instructor, a scarred veteran of a species Sarah did not recognize. You will face waves of enemies. Each wave gets harder. Fight until you cannot continue, or until you trigger your beacon. There is no shame in withdrawal. This trial has injured many great warriors. Some have died because they did not withdraw in time. Died? One competitor asked nervously. The safety systems are excellent, but not perfect. If you are hurt badly enough, fast enough, you can die before emergency extraction. Know your limits. The instructor looked at each of them. His eyes lingered on Sarah. Especially you, human. Sarah nodded. Understood. The arena activated. The walls dissolved into a ruined city. Buildings stood like broken teeth. Smoke drifted through the air. Wave 1. Begin. Enemies appeared. Holographic soldiers with energy weapons. There were 20 of them. Sarah moved immediately, taking cover behind a destroyed vehicle. She aimed and fired with controlled precision. 3 shots, 3 kills. The other competitors were impressive. The Krethian warrior charged forward, his exoskeleton deflecting shots, his strength allowing him to tear enemies apart with his bare hands. And Althani used her massive size to crush enemies. Others used their natural advantages. Sarah used cover, angles, and accuracy. She made every shot count. Wave 1 ended in minutes. Wave 2 began immediately. 40 enemies this time, better armed. Sarah kept moving. She had learned long ago that staying still meant death. She used the terrain, always keeping something between her and the shooters. She flanked, she repositioned, she adapted. On the observation deck, the council watched. They had expected Sarah to be competent. Humans had proven they could use tools effectively. But they had not expected this level of skill. She moves like water, Torvin observed. Always flowing, never in the same place twice. Compensating for her fragility, another delegate noted. If she were stronger, she would not need such elaborate tactics. Perhaps, Torvin said. But he was not sure anymore. Wave 5, Wave 6, Wave 7. Competitors began to withdraw. The difficulty was increasing rapidly. Enemies were faster, smarter, more numerous. During Wave 8, Sarah took her first serious hit. An energy blast caught her in the side, burning through her armor. She felt ribs crack. Pain exploded through her torso. She gasped and stumbled. The medical monitors went wild. Commander Chen has suffered significant trauma. Recommend immediate withdrawal. On the ground, Sarah pressed a hand to her side. She could feel the broken ribs grinding. Every breath was agony. She looked at the beacon on her wrist. One press, and this would be over. Medical teams would extract her. She lowered her hand and raised her rifle instead. "What is she doing?" the medical officer demanded. "She needs treatment." Sarah killed 3 more enemies and moved to new cover. Her movements were slower now, more careful. But she did not stop. Wave 9, Wave 10. Another competitor withdrew, clutching an injured limb. Sarah's breathing was shallow. Deep breaths hurt too much. She was bleeding under her armor. Her vision swam occasionally, but she blinked it clear and kept fighting. Wave 11 brought a new enemy type. Large, heavily armored constructs that required multiple hits to bring down. The remaining competitors focused fire, working together. Sarah noticed one of the big constructs targeting her. It raised a massive weapon. She tried to dodge, but her injured body was too slow. The blast caught her shoulder, her left shoulder. The prosthetic arm sparked and went dead. Sarah fell hard. Her rifle clattered away. She lay there, stunned, as the construct advanced on her. She rolled to her right side, drawing her sidearm with her real hand. She fired at the construct's weak points, the joints in its armor. It took 6 shots, but it fell. She tried to stand. Her left arm hung uselessly. The prosthetic was damaged, no longer responding to her neural signals. On the observation deck, there was silence. "Her arm," someone whispered. "It is mechanical." Torvin leaned forward. She has been fighting with an artificial limb this entire time? The combat instructor checked his data. Yes, according to her files, she lost it in combat on Earth 3 years ago. Sarah managed to get to her feet. She looked at her dead arm, then at the enemies spawning for Wave 12. She transferred her knife to her right hand and picked up a fallen enemy's weapon. She should withdraw, the medical officer insisted. She is severely injured. She has lost function in one limb. But Sarah did not withdraw. Wave 12, Wave 13. She adapted her fighting style. One-armed, injured, bleeding. She used the environment more than ever. Triggered traps, caused enemies to fight each other, used explosions to her advantage. Another competitor withdrew, then another. Only Sarah and a Krethian warrior remained. Wave 14 came. Then Wave 15. The Krethian was tiring. His exoskeleton was cracked in places. But he was still strong, still dangerous. Sarah was barely standing, blood soaked through her armor. She leaned against walls to stay upright. But she kept fighting. Wave 15 ended. The arena announced a brief pause before Wave 16. The Krethian looked at Sarah. "You should stop. You have proven your point." "You are tougher than we thought." Sarah shook her head. "Not done yet." "You are dying," he said flatly. "Your body cannot take much more." "Probably," Sarah agreed. She checked her sidearm, low on ammunition. "But I can take a little more." Wave 16 began. The enemies were the toughest yet. Fast, strong, smart. They coordinated their attacks. They targeted weak points. They were programmed to be nearly unbeatable. The Krethian fought valiantly. His strength was impressive, but eventually a concentrated barrage broke through his defenses. He went down and triggered his beacon. Sarah was alone. She had no rifle. Her sidearm was empty. Her knife was chipped and damaged. Her left arm was useless. Her ribs were broken. She was bleeding from multiple wounds. 5 enemies remained from the wave. They surrounded her. Sarah laughed. It hurt her broken ribs terribly, but she laughed anyway. "Come on, then," she said. "Let us finish this." She pulled a grenade from her belt, the last one. She armed it and threw it at her own feet. The explosion knocked her backward and took out 3 of the enemies. The remaining 2 advanced on her. Sarah drew her knife with her right hand. When the first one reached her, she drove the knife into its weak point. It dissolved. The last enemy struck her. The blow sent her flying. She hit the ground hard and could not get up. The enemy stood over her, weapon raised for a finishing blow. Sarah looked up at it. She could not move. She had nothing left, except her voice. "Not today," she whispered. The blow came down. The arena froze. The safety system activated, pulling her out just before the final hit. Medical teams rushed in. Torvin ran into the arena. He reached Sarah as they were lifting her onto a stretcher. She was conscious, barely. Blood covered her face. Her breathing was wet and labored. "You fool!" Torvin said, but his voice was not angry. It was something else. "Why did you not withdraw?" Sarah's eyes focused on him through the pain. "I can keep going." "No, you cannot. You can barely breathe." "I can try." Torvin looked at this broken, bleeding human. She had reached Wave 16. Only 3 species in Council history had ever reached that level. And she had done it with a prosthetic arm, with broken ribs, with injuries that should have stopped her 10 waves ago. "I know you can," he said quietly. "That is what terrifies me." As they carried Sarah away, the council chamber erupted in discussion. They had witnessed something they did not understand, something that defied their logic and experience. They had watched someone too fragile to survive continue anyway. They had seen someone who should have quit, refused to give up. They had witnessed the human spirit refusing to accept defeat, even when defeat was logical and sensible. Torvin stood in the empty arena for a long time. Around him, holographic enemies faded away, Blood stained the ground where Sarah had fallen. He thought about his own people, strong, armored, nearly unbreakable. But when the logical choice was to withdraw, they withdrew. When continuing made no sense, they stopped. Humans apparently did not work that way. That made them dangerous. That made them valuable. That made them something the galaxy had never seen before. The medical bay was quiet except for the soft beeping of monitors. Sarah lay in a specialized healing pod, her body suspended in a gel that accelerated tissue repair. Her eyes were closed, but she was not sleeping. The doctors had given her something for the pain, but she had refused to let them put her under completely. She needed to stay aware. The final trial was in 5 days. Outside the medical bay, the council had called an emergency session, not in the grand chamber, but in a smaller conference room. Present were Torvin, the council speaker, the chief medical officer, and several xenobiologists. On the screens around the room, data scrolled endlessly. Human biology, human history, human psychology. The chief medical officer of Elkari, named Shimmer, spoke first. I have completed my analysis of Commander Chen. Her injuries are severe but will heal. What concerns me more is what I found during my examination. Explain, the speaker said. Humans have an unusually high tolerance for pain, not because they feel less pain, but because they can choose to continue despite it. Look at this. Shimmer pulled up brain scans. These are her neural patterns during the combat trial. Her pain receptors were firing at maximum. Her brain was receiving clear signals that her body was damaged and needed to stop. But there is another part of her brain, here. Shimmer pointed. This region was overriding the pain signals, making a conscious choice to ignore them. That is illogical, one of the xenobiologists said. Pain exists to protect the body from further harm. For most species, yes, Shimmer agreed, but humans evolved differently. They developed the ability to suppress their own survival instincts. Torvin studied the scans. Why would evolution favor such a trait? A human xenobiologist named Dr. Marcus Williams appeared on one of the screens. He was calling in from Earth. War Marshal Torvin, I can answer that. May I? Please, Torvin said. Dr. Williams brought up images of Earth. Our planet was not kind to early humans. We had no claws, no armor, no venom, no natural weapons. We were slow compared to predators. We were weak compared to large prey animals. By all logic, we should have gone extinct. Then how did you survive? The speaker asked. We ran, Dr. Williams said simply. Humans are persistence hunters. We would chase prey for hours, sometimes days, until it collapsed from exhaustion. Our prey was faster, but we could keep going longer. We evolved to override our body's signals to stop. We evolved to push through pain, through exhaustion, through everything that said we should quit. He brought up more images. We evolved in hot climates. Sweating became our cooling system. It uses a lot of water and energy, but it works. We evolved to go long periods with little food or water. We evolved to heal from injuries that would kill others of our size. But you heal slowly, Shimmer noted. Yes, Dr. Williams agreed. But we heal from almost anything that does not immediately kill us. Break our bones and they grow back stronger. Damage our muscles and they rebuild bigger. Injure us and we adapt. Torvin leaned back in his chair. You are saying humans evolved to be damaged and keep functioning. Exactly. And there is more. May I show you something? Dr. Williams brought up chemical diagrams. This is adrenaline. Humans produce it in response to stress or danger. It temporarily increases our strength, dulls our pain, speeds our reactions. For a brief time, we can exceed our normal physical limits. A chemical that makes you stronger, one of the delegates said. That is remarkable. It comes with costs, Dr. Williams warned. After the adrenaline fades, we crash. Hard. But in the moment of danger, it has saved countless human lives. Shimmer added another scan. I detected elevated adrenaline in Commander Chen throughout both trials. Her body was constantly in a state of emergency response. That is incredibly stressful and damaging over time. She knew this? Torvin asked. She had to, Shimmer said. The effects are not subtle. Torvin stood and walked to the window. Outside, stars glittered in the darkness. So humans are a species that evolved to hurt themselves to survive, to push past logical stopping points, to keep going when stopping makes more sense. It sounds insane when you put it that way, Dr. Williams said, but it kept us alive long enough to develop tools, agriculture, civilization, and eventually, star travel. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Torvin turned. I want to see her history, her personal history, the incident where she lost her arm. Dr. Williams hesitated. That information is classified military record. I am requesting it officially as part of the coalition evaluation, Torvin said. I need to understand what kind of person volunteers for this. After a pause, Dr. Williams nodded. I will send you the file. An hour later, Torvin sat alone in a viewing room. The file played on the screen in front of him. It showed Sarah Chen 3 years ago. She was part of a Marine unit responding to a terrorist attack. An improvised explosive device had detonated in a civilian area. Buildings were collapsing. People were screaming. Sarah's unit went in to evacuate civilians. The footage was from her helmet camera. Torvin watched as she pulled people from rubble, directed them to safety, coordinated with her team. Then she heard it. A child crying. Coming from a building that was about to collapse. Her commanding officer ordered her to fall back. The building was too unstable. Sarah did not fall back. She ran into the building. The camera showed her climbing over debris, squeezing through tight spaces, following the sound of crying. She found a little girl, maybe 5 years old, trapped under a beam. Sarah tried to lift it. It was too heavy. The building groaned. Debris fell around them. I have got you, Sarah said to the girl. I promise, I will get you out. She used a piece of rebar as a lever. She pushed with everything she had. The beam shifted. The girl crawled free. Sarah grabbed her and ran for the exit. The building began to collapse. Sarah shoved the girl through a window to her teammates outside. As she started to follow, a support beam fell. It caught her left arm, crushing it against the wall. Sarah screamed. She was trapped. The building was coming down around her. On the video, Torvin could hear her teammates yelling, trying to reach her. But there was no time. Sarah pulled out her combat knife. Her face on the camera was set with terrible determination. She did what had to be done. She cut through muscle and tissue, freeing herself. Then she dove through the window as the building collapsed behind her. The video ended with her lying on the ground, bleeding, her severed arm behind her in the rubble, but alive. The little girl was safe beside her, crying but uninjured. Torvin sat in the dark room for a long time after the video ended. He understood now. Sarah Chen had already proven she would do anything to save others. She had already proven she could make impossible choices. The trials were nothing compared to what she had already survived. He went to the medical bay. Sarah was awake, reading something on a data pad with her good hand. Her left arm was in a specialized brace, the prosthetic being repaired. War Marshal, she said, setting down the pad. I did not expect visitors. Torvin pulled up a chair. I watched the file. The incident where you lost your arm. Sarah's face became carefully neutral. I see. The girl, did she survive? Yes, she is 10 now. Her mother sends me pictures sometimes. Was it worth it? Your arm for her life? Sarah looked at him like he had asked the stupidest question in the galaxy. Of course it was worth it. She is alive. That is all that matters. You do not regret it? The pain, the loss, the years of rehabilitation. I regret that I was not faster, that I could not save both my arm and her life, but given the choice again, I would make the same decision. Sarah met his eyes. That probably does not make sense to you. No, Torvin admitted. It does not. My people value strength and survival. Sacrificing yourself for one small life seems illogical. Maybe it is illogical, Sarah said. But it is what makes us human. We protect the weak. We sacrifice for others. We choose love over logic sometimes. Torvin was quiet for a moment. The council is debating whether to allow you to attempt the final trial. Many believe you have already proven your point. They worry you will die in the attempt. I will not die, Sarah said confidently. You cannot know that. You are right. I cannot know it. But I believe it. And belief is powerful. Belief, Torvin repeated. Another illogical human trait. Sarah smiled. The best things about humanity are illogical, War Marshal. Hope, courage, love, sacrifice. None of them make logical sense. But they make us who we are. Torvin stood to leave. At the door, he paused. The final trial is the Gauntlet. It combines everything from the previous trials plus team elements. It is designed to break even the strongest warriors. I do not want to see you die in there, Commander Chen. Then watch me live, Sarah said. Watch me show your council what humans are truly capable of. As Torvin left, he realized something. The council had been asking the wrong question. They had been asking if humans were strong enough for the coalition. The right question was whether the coalition was ready for humans. 5 days passed in a blur of medical treatment and preparation. Sarah's ribs healed enough to function. Her prosthetic arm was repaired and upgraded by coalition engineers who were fascinated by human technology. The frostbite damage faded. She was not at 100%, but she was ready. The Gauntlet was different from the other trials. This was not about individual performance. This was about teamwork under the most extreme conditions imaginable. Sarah stood with her assigned team in the briefing room. There were 5 of them total. Herself, a Krathian warrior named Vex, an Althani named Cora, a flying species called Drin, and a Vorn named Silex. They looked at her with obvious doubt. No offense, human, Vex said, his voice rumbling. But you will slow us down. Perhaps you should sit this one out. No offense taken, Sarah replied calmly. But I am doing this trial. Try to keep up. Cora, the massive Althani, laughed. It was not a cruel laugh. I like her spirit, at least. The trial instructor entered. Listen carefully. The gauntlet lasts 7 days. You will face every type of challenge, environmental hazards, combat scenarios, puzzles that require cooperation, rescue missions. You must work as a team or you will fail. Individuals who cannot contribute will be voted off by their team. If you lose more than one member, the entire team is disqualified. What is the success rate? Silex asked. 40% of teams complete it. But completion is not the goal. The goal is to see how you work under pressure, how you adapt, how you lead and follow. The instructor looked at each of them. You start in 1 hour. Use this time to learn about each other. When the instructor left, the team gathered around a table. They shared their skills and abilities. Vex was strong and durable. Cora was stronger still. Silex could regenerate and produce a paralyzing venom. Drin could fly and had excellent vision. Sarah listed her skills honestly. Tactical planning, marksmanship, survival training, adaptability. Adaptability? Vex asked. That is not a combat skill. It is the most important combat skill, Sarah said. Plans fail. Equipment breaks. Situations change. Adapting is how you survive. Vex did not look convinced, but he nodded. The gauntlet began. The first day was environmental. The team was dropped into a swamp with toxic water and aggressive wildlife. They had to reach a checkpoint 10 miles away. Sarah's knowledge of ecosystems helped them identify safe paths. Drin scouted from above. Vex and Cora handled the dangerous creatures. They reached the checkpoint tired but intact. Day 2 brought combat, wave after wave of enemies in urban terrain. Sarah's tactical mind proved valuable. She coordinated their positions, called out threats, created ambush points. The team moved like a well-oiled machine. Even Vex admitted she had good instincts. Day 3 was the puzzle day. They entered a massive structure filled with locked doors, codes to crack, and obstacles to overcome. Each puzzle required different skills. Some needed strength, some needed speed, some needed problem-solving. They reached a puzzle that stumped everyone. A complex mathematical equation written in an alien language none of them could read. They spent an hour trying different approaches. Sarah studied it from different angles. Then she noticed something. "It is not math. It is music." "What?" Cora asked. "Look at the patterns. These are musical notes, not numbers. We need to play them in sequence." Sarah found what looked like a musical instrument on the wall. She studied it, figured out how it worked, and played the sequence. A door opened. "How did you know that?" Vex asked. "I did not know. I guessed. Humans are good at finding patterns, even in chaos." They continued. Day 4 brought new challenges. Day 5 pushed them harder. The team was exhausted, injured, running low on supplies, but they kept going. On day 6, everything went wrong. They were in a simulated rescue mission, supposed to extract civilians from a collapsing structure. But the structure collapsed too early. The team was trapped inside, toxic gas filling the space. Cora tried to break through the walls, too strong. Drin flew to the ceiling looking for exits. None. Silex tested the gas. It would kill them in minutes, even with their resistances. Panic set in. Even these experienced warriors could see no way out. Sarah looked around calmly. Her mind worked through the problem. They needed an exit. Breaking through would take too long, but creating an exit— "I have an idea," she said, "but it is dangerous." "More dangerous than dying here?" Vex snapped. "Possibly." Sarah pointed to support columns. "Those are the load-bearing structures. If we destroy them in the right sequence, we can cause a controlled collapse toward that wall. The explosion will create an opening." "That will bring the whole building down on us," Cora said. "The whole building is already coming down, but if we time it right, the collapse will push outward, not inward. We ride the explosion out." "That is insane," Vex said. "You have a better idea?" Sarah asked. Silence. "If this fails, we die," Silex said. "If we do nothing, we definitely die," Sarah replied. "I will take probably over definitely any day." Vex stared at her. Then slowly, he nodded. "Tell us what to do." Sarah directed them. They placed charges on the supports she indicated. The timing had to be perfect. Sarah counted down, her voice steady despite the gas burning her lungs. 3, 2, 1, now! The explosions were deafening. The building shook. Then it collapsed, but exactly as Sarah predicted. The wall blew outward. The team dove through the opening as the structure came down behind them. They landed hard on the ground outside. Alive, bruised and battered, but alive. Vex lay on his back, gasping. "You are absolutely insane." "But it worked," Sarah coughed. Vex started laughing. "Yes, it worked." Day 7 arrived, the final challenge. It was announced as a combat trial. Each team member would face a one-on-one match against a council champion. If they won or lasted 10 minutes, they passed. The team needed at least 3 victories to complete the gauntlet. Drin went first and lost in 4 minutes. Silex went second and won. Cora went third and won. They had 2 victories. One more would complete the trial. Vex was next. His opponent was a fierce warrior. They fought hard. Vex lasted 9 minutes before going down. That left Sarah. Her opponent walked into the arena. It was War Marshal Torvin himself. The crowd in the observation deck murmured. This was unprecedented. Council members did not usually participate in trials. Sarah looked at Torvin. He was massive, experienced, and strong. She was injured, tired, and outmatched in every physical category. She smiled. This should be interesting. I will not hold back, Torvin said. Good. Neither will I. The match began. Torvin advanced confidently. Sarah backed away. She knew she could not trade blows with him. She had to make him work for every advantage. She dodged, she rolled, she stayed just out of reach. Torvin swung, and Sarah was not there. He charged, and she sidestepped. She made him chase her around the arena. Minutes passed. Torvin was fast, but Sarah was faster over short distances. Her human endurance came into play. She could keep this pace for a long time. Torvin began to breathe harder. He was strong, but sustained effort was not his species' advantage. Sarah kept moving, never stopping, never giving him a moment to rest. At 8 minutes, Torvin's movements were slower. At 9 minutes, he was frustrated. At 9 minutes and 30 seconds, he made a mistake. He overextended on a strike. Sarah saw the opening. She moved inside his guard and struck. Not with full strength, but precisely at a weak point in his armor. In a real fight, the strike would have been lethal. Torvin froze. Then slowly he stepped back. I yield. The arena was silent. Sarah extended her hand. Torvin looked at it, then grasped it in the human gesture of respect. You could not beat me with strength, he said quietly. So you beat me with endurance and tactics. I used what I had, Sarah replied. That is what humans do. The gauntlet was complete. Sarah's team had succeeded. In the council chamber, the final vote took place. Humanity's membership in the Galactic Defense Coalition. After everything they had witnessed, the vote was unanimous. Yes. But the council made a specific designation. Humans would not be frontline troops or heavy assault forces. They would be special operations specialists, endurance experts, tactical advisors, and most importantly, instructors. Because the galaxy needed to learn what humans knew. How to keep going when logic said to stop. How to adapt when plans failed. How to win, not through strength, but through determination. Sarah was offered a position as the first human ambassador of combat integration. She accepted. 6 months later, Sarah stood in a training facility on the council station. A new batch of alien recruits had arrived. They were young, eager, and confident. One of them, a young Krethian, looked at Sarah and said to his friend, "Why do we need to learn from a human? They are so fragile." Vex, who was now an instructor alongside Sarah, overheard. He smiled. "That is what we all thought." The young Krethian turned. "What changed your mind?" "We tried to break her," Vex said simply. "Then we realized some things cannot be broken. Some things bend but never break. Some things get stronger in the breaking." He gestured to Sarah. "That is what you are here to learn." Sarah addressed the recruits. "Welcome. The next 3 months will be the hardest of your lives. I am going to push you past your limits. I am going to show you that limits are just suggestions. I am going to teach you that strength is not just about muscle and armor." She walked among them, meeting each one's eyes. "You are all stronger than me, tougher than me, more durable than me. But I am going to teach you something your species never had to learn. I am going to teach you how to be fragile and survive anyway, how to be weak and win anyway, how to face impossible odds and keep going anyway." She stopped at the center of the room. "Class begins tomorrow at 0600 hours. Do not be late. And remember one thing." She paused, making sure they were all listening. "Being fragile is not weakness. It is just a different kind of strength. And by the time I am done with you, you will understand what that means." The young Krethian, who had questioned her worth, whispered to his friend, "I think we made a mistake doubting her." His friend nodded. "We all did." As the recruits filed out, Torvin approached Sarah. "Do you think you can teach them? Their species evolved differently. They do not have human determination." Maybe not, Sarah admitted, but they can learn pieces of it. They can learn to push a little harder, to think more creatively, to adapt more quickly. Even small changes will make them better warriors. Torvin nodded. You have changed the galaxy, Commander Chen, not through conquest or technology, but by showing us something we did not know we were missing. What is that? Hope. The belief that impossible challenges can be overcome. The stubborn refusal to accept defeat. Torvin looked out at the stars. Humans brought hope to the galaxy. That is more powerful than any weapon. Sarah smiled. Then I guess it is a good thing we are on your side. As the twin suns set over the council station, Sarah stood at the window looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, humanity's home, a planet that had forged a species through hardship, through pain, through endless challenges, a species that learned to be fragile and survive anyway. She raised her prosthetic hand, flexing the fingers. The aliens had wanted to break her. Instead, she had shown them what being human really meant. Not being unbreakable, but being broken and continuing anyway. Being hurt and healing anyway. Being knocked down and standing up anyway. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. And it was a gift the galaxy desperately needed. Tomorrow she would start teaching. Tomorrow she would begin passing on what humans knew. Tomorrow, a new chapter would begin. But tonight, Sarah Chen stood at the window and smiled. Because she had done what she came here to do. She had proven that humans belonged among the stars, not despite their fragility, but because of it. The galaxy would never be the same.